What is happening, my good people? It is the Wednesday. You know what time it is. The Wednesday live stream coming at you here on an April 2nd in the year of our Lord 2025 as we usher in, that's right, the best sports month on the calendar. And I will unpack that here in the next few minutes among many other topics that we'll get into. We'll talk about the NFL rule changes. We'll talk some baseball. Of course, we got the situation there with the Dodgers on a pace to go 162-0, and the Braves to go 0-162, if you can believe that. And both teams have been playing one another over the last couple of days. I'll get into some NBA stuff. I'll get into a bunch of different things. And even lastly, anybody going to Citi Field who are from the tri-state area who are watching this, whether live or on the replay, anybody heading out there, well, leave a comment in the box there, chat box, whatever it may be, because I will be out there. I'm going to do a little bit of, I'm not going to say scouting, but I have a segment that's going to be a part of this channel early next week, maybe even as early as the weekend, as I'm going to flock out to Citi Field. Opening day is Friday, Toronto Blue Jays. The weather's supposed to be temperature-wise nice, iffy as far as weather goes, but I'm going to also talk about that in the back end, among many other things here to discuss. And just like I mentioned, welcome to the Wednesday live stream every Wednesday here, high noon Eastern time. And of course, at the ticker on the bottom, please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I implore you to do so, or wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. I also have the podcast, which comes at you every Monday and Thursday. Tomorrow, obviously the latest, which we'll get into a bunch of different things, similar to what you're going to hear now, but even more so on an even bigger scale. That's right. How can it be bigger than live? Well, I guess I could stay on here for about 3-4 hours to discuss and unpack a bunch of different things. But as of right now, you got me here, but I had to go through the proper channels to discuss the podcast there Monday and Thursday. And I'm also, now that I think about it, one other layer that I may add to this channel, another different aspect that people may think twice, or even maybe even more than that, if you could actually do think more than twice, but a little bit of critiquing. Yes, I will unpack that later on. So a lot to get into over the next hour plus. So please share your thoughts. I even got a comment right off the bat. Yes, my guy Val. Giants won, Warriors. I know Warriors had a big win there in Memphis, and the Warriors are looking like a team that they could be on a mission. Obviously, since Jimmy Butler's been a part of the team, I believe they're 22-3 since he's come on board. So that just goes to show you how much he's been an impact on that team. And of course, the San Francisco Giants, very tough division, as you know. You have two teams in the National League West that are undefeated. Yes, not only the aforementioned Dodgers, but the Padres are 6-0. So we could definitely get into that later on as well. But one more time, like I mentioned, you are watching live. And for those who aren't, please leave a comment. This is an open forum here to talk about whatever's on your mind, to discuss anything that you may not like with what I'm going to say, or who knows, maybe you want me to dress up a little bit. If you watch the podcast that I put out on Monday, I was actually in a shirt and tie. People are probably thinking, wait, Shay Rose in the studio? No, that's not the case. It just happened to be a very special occasion. You'd have to go back and watch, because in the very first couple of minutes of the podcast that I released on Monday, you'll understand why, as you, I'm sure, saw by the thumbnail. Here I am looking sharp and dressed as if I'm going to a job interview, but no, that wasn't the case. So you definitely have to go back and watch that. I would appreciate if you do so. And again, leave a like, comment, etc. on that particular podcast and here on the live stream. For those who are joined and hopped on board, or if you are catching the replay, please leave a message. I would greatly appreciate it. And for those who are going to tune in, I got my guy Val B in the house. Much appreciated. But share your thoughts, whatever's on your mind, back and forth. Again, this is all about friendly banter. Keep it respectful. Let's not get too personal, crazy. Not that has come to this point ever since I've started doing these live streams as early as the middle of January. So for you and your contribution, it is welcome. So please do so as we move it along. Now, let's get right to it. It is April 2nd, the day after April Fool's, of course. And there's no fooling when it comes to this part of the year, and in particular, this month. Because there are a lot of people that would think that October, maybe even September for some people, but October only because you have the NFL in full swing, probably 4 weeks, at least 4 weeks into what would be not necessarily a long, because we all know that NFL goes by like that, but everybody's wrapped up in the National Football League, the Shield. It's impenetrable, as I've said time after time. And when you look at college football, which is also in full bloom, the baseball playoffs begin in October. The NHL and NBA seasons also commence at that time. Where a lot of people are going to look at that as the best sports month of the year. Well, I beg to differ. And you can fight me off all you want. Please leave a comment for those who are hopping on board. Or for those who are watching the replay, as I've said now a few times, so I'll pipe down and shut up when it comes to that. April, let's face it, it is hands down, no ifs, ands, buts, babies about it, the best sports month on the calendar. And let's start right here. Final Four this coming Saturday, as we all know, where you're going to have Duke and Houston, as well as Auburn and Florida. Then you have the championship games on Monday. So you have a champion that's going to be crowned in college basketball to conclude, which has been a dreadful March Madness. I mean, there is no way you could slice it, dice it. You could give me a few games that have been compelling. Obviously, you had the Maryland, Colorado State, which came down to the final play. You had Arkansas losing at Texas Tech as they had a 13-point lead with 4 minutes to go. Then Texas Tech returned the favor to Florida with Walter Clayton Jr.'s heroics. And maybe a game or two that I've missed. But other than that, it has been a tournament to forget. But maybe, quite possibly, that could change come Saturday in San Antonio with the 2 games, the semifinals leading into the final day Monday night. So you have that just to start off with. I get it's the first week, but baseball, hope springs eternal. It's a long season. I get it's a marathon, but still, we are not a full week. Once we get to tomorrow, it'll be a full week into the baseball season, and we already have some storylines, which I'll touch on in a little bit, and I already started to hint about 3-4 minutes ago. So at least you got that. You can sink your teeth into baseball fans. So that's just 2 things right off the bat. And guess what? It's April 2nd. And yes, I understand that the semifinals, Final Four doesn't start till Saturday, but it's something to discuss, something to lead into, and especially with the way it's gone down this year, as bad as the tournament has been, you have 4 1 seeds that are going to represent in each of the regions, which is the second time it's happened in tournament history. The first time being 2008, where you had North Carolina, UCLA, Memphis, and Kansas, which was your final. And we all know Memphis, who just blew it there. And the reason why I went like that, because I'm thinking about Mario Chalmers hitting that 3 to bring the game to overtime, where Kansas had a deficit. I believe it was 8 points with about 2:40 to go, and they came back to tie and win a national championship. So you have those 2 sports to look at. Now, a week from tomorrow is the tradition unlike any other. And I understand that for a majority of the sports fans out there, that they'll just thumb their nose, be like, you really think I'm going to follow what's going to go on in golf down in Augusta? I don't care how popular. I don't care if it's the Super Bowl of golf. No one's going to pay attention to it. Well, I will, and I am, because I do have a sports show. And yes, I love the majors in golf and in tennis for that matter. But when you have the setting in Augusta, Georgia, where you have the greenery, the azaleas blooming, Amen Corner, and everything that the golf season, which for all intents and purposes, it begins next Thursday, as we will follow it along. And you have very interesting storylines going into the Masters. Scottie Scheffler, we know how phenomenal he plays, especially at the start of the quote-unquote golf season. Rory McIlroy, who's coming off of a TPC, the Players' Championship, a couple of weeks ago, and he's been trying to get that elusive next major under his belt. He's not won a major in over 10 years. Will it continue? And we look at the live golfers who will be a part of this tournament, the Bryson DeChambeaus, the Brooks Koepkas, the Patrick Reeds of the world. Sergio Garcia, who won the Masters many years ago, so he's exempt for the rest of his life, but he will obviously be a part of the field. So you have all these great golfers that are going to go at it. John Rahm, how can you forget? Another one who jumped to live, but will be back in the mix here. So you have the college basketball, you have baseball starting, you have the Masters, and oh, by the way, a week from this coming Saturday, you will not only have the NBA playoffs beginning, But you also have the Stanley Cup playoffs beginning, which is the 2-month sprint to a championship there in late June. And I love that opening weekend of the playoffs. And I get it that you also have the play-in tournament in the NBA the few days prior to that. So when you think about it, it would be, here we are, Wednesday. So 2 weeks from yesterday, 13 days from now, you'll have the beginning of the play-in tournament. So we have that to look forward to. But with the fall and winter sports now getting ready to conclude their regular seasons and for the postseason to begin, which I get it. It's not like baseball where it's 3.5 weeks and it's over. It's not the NFL. I understand nothing is the NFL, but it's not the NFL where you pretty much have wild card, divisional, championship weekend, week off, and then the Super Bowl, which in essence, if you condense it, it's 4 weeks, technically 5. But with the hockey and the basketball, it's forever. And I understand that. But it's going to be compelling. It's going to be thrilling. It's going to be riveting, as we know. More so to hockey in the first couple of rounds because there could be upset specials where in the NBA, you rarely get the 1-8 or the 8 beating the 1. I understand Miami did a couple of years ago, but when you didn't have Giannis for 2.5 games, that was certainly a contributing factor for the Heat to win that opening playoff series. So for basketball, hockey, full bloom here in a couple of weeks, who's not going to be anticipating what's going to transpire over the next 2 months? Will the Celtics be the first back-to-back champions since the Warriors of 2016-17? Will Oklahoma City or even Cleveland, who have had phenomenal regular seasons, will they both meet up in a final as the top 2 seeds? And for whatever reason, my nose is itching right now. So my apologies for those watching. And then you have the hockey. Will Florida, will they repeat as Cup champions, considering that they've been in the last 2 Stanley Cup finals, losing to Vegas 2 years ago and then obviously winning last year against Edmonton? Will Edmonton get back to the dance and do what the Panthers have done the last 2 years, losing that Cup final before winning? But then now let's see if they can get back for a rematch with the Panthers, who are defending their Cup. And the Capitals, to me, how I look at the way that the Capital season has gone, I'll talk about them a little bit later on, in particular their one player, Alexander Ovechkin. Can they get to a final? And I have a very interesting, let's just say, observation when it comes to grade 8 and a one Alexander Ovechkin. So you have to stay tuned for that. And then you have the Winnipeg Jets, who have the most points in the sport, although they lost last night in, as a matter of fact, no, they still have the most points because the Capitals had 103 going into yesterday, now at 105. The Jets are at 106. And I get it. The President's Trophy winner is one that you don't even want to get if you're the top team, because generally that is a curse more so than the blessing, because rarely do a team that wins the President's Trophy for the most points in the regular season go on and win a Stanley Cup. All you got to do is look at the Bruins and their record-setting regular season 2 years ago, out in the first round. And then the Rangers last year, who had the most points in the sport. And what happened to them? Upended in a conference final. So you have those 2 scenarios with both sports. And I'm not even done yet. So yes, we could talk about the college basketball. We could talk about the baseball. We could talk about the golf. We could talk about NBA playoffs. We could talk about Stanley Cup playoffs. And there's another event at the end of the month, which is probably going to get more shine than all the other sports that I just brought up. And that's the NFL draft. And we all know that is going to be an extravaganza. Everybody that week leading into the draft, which is 3 weeks from tomorrow, where you're going to have just craziness abound when it comes to the top part of this draft. We would think that Tennessee is going to select Cam Ward at quarterback from Miami as the number 1 pick overall. But then where are you going to go from 2, 3, and beyond? Are the Cleveland Browns, considering Jimmy Haslam, the owner, had come out and said that when he signed Deshaun Watson, said that really he didn't even sign him. He eventually did, but he had to trade for Deshaun Watson and gave up all those picks. And then when they signed him to that $230 million fully guaranteed deal, that his quote just the other day where he said, yep, that was a big swing and a miss. Well, now that he's admitted that, does that mean that they're going to pivot and maybe draft Shedeur Sanders with the number 2 overall, despite the fact that they still owe Deshaun Watson a boatload of money? Or will they go on the defensive side? Will they draft a guy like Abdul Carter from Penn State, who has issues with a knee, I believe, or even a foot? Do they roll the dice, considering that they could use him as the bookend with Myles Garrett as a pass rushing duo extraordinaire? And we all know that Myles Garrett secured the bag again this offseason with a $40 million a year deal. So for the Browns, do they go in that direction? Or do the Giants, who signed 2 quarterbacks this offseason, and one Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, but depending on what the Browns do, and we would think they may not draft a quarterback, do they draft Shedeur Sanders? Even with them bringing in the 2 quarterbacks, albeit 1-year deal for Wilson and 2-year deal for Winston, but do they bring in Shedeur Sanders, or do they go Travis Hunter, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner there out of Colorado, Shedeur Sanders' teammate? So you have that, which is going to be all the rage 3 weeks from now, and everybody's just going to be up to their eyeballs with mock drafts and trade scenarios and what is going to take place. So you already know that the NFL will be front and center that week, if it's probably not even going to be that week, maybe even 2 weeks before that, because we all know they are going to suffocate everybody and take all the oxygen out of the room, because that's what the NFL does on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, and actually year-to-year basis. Cheers to that. So think about it. You have 6 sports that you could hang your hat on here over the course of these next 30 days. And I understand October, baseball playoffs, the 2 seasons beginning in the fall and winter sports, and then you have the 2 big sports, NFL and college, already well underway. But I just think here, April, because for most of the country, the weather starts to change. And yes, here in the Northeast, it's still chilly. The high is going to be 48 degrees today. And if you're going to go to the Yankee game tonight, God bless you, because I'm sure you're going to have to not only bring a blanket, but maybe even try to bring a portable heater if you could. But when we look at the spring, we look forward to the summer. We look forward to the playoffs. We look forward to, and that's in NBA and NHL. And we certainly wrap our arms around that, especially in this region. So for those who, to me, are going to come at me or will refute the October being the best sports month, listen, I won't argue that much. And I get it that it's just a preference overall and an opinion. But I truly believe that this is the best sports month of the year. Although October is 1A to April's 1 overall, but it's certainly an interesting debate that we could have for those who want to chime in. As a matter of fact, I do see a comment here, so let's see. Val, you like this live? All right, I appreciate that, Val. I appreciate you stopping by, and you always contribute on YouTube with all my comments, so you know I certainly appreciate you following me, subscribing, etc. And as always, welcome aboard. So for starters, that's where I'm going to go here with the month of April, since we're just 2 days in, and obviously a lot to cover here when it comes to this month. And I'll even segue that to a little baseball, because right now the Dodgers and even the Padres right behind them, I got to put them in as a big story. 162-0. Now, of course, that's not going to happen. And to my guy Bio, who I'm sure will probably jump on board, another big follower of the live streams and, of course, the channel, etc. His LA Dodgers are off to a tremendous start. 7-0, the first time that a defending champ has started off at 7-0. I believe, no, wait, let me take that back. In fact, let me reel that one in. The Dodgers 7-0 start is the best start by a reigning champ, I believe, since I want to go back as far as the 39 Yankees. So think about that. A lot of teams over those years have not come close to matching what the Dodgers have. And here they are, 7-0, and they've actually done it on 2 different continents. Remember, they started their season out in Japan against the Cubs 2 weeks ago, and then now they've only played the home games at Dodger Stadium, where they swept the Tigers and have taken the first 2 from the Atlanta Braves, and I'll get to them in a minute. But this Dodger team, as we all know, loaded, stacked, and we talked about this even 2 weeks ago, as a team that is either going to be a juggernaut or will they sleepwalk through this regular season. Well, right now they're looking like world beaters and a team that is even more on a mission this year than last year. Because think about it, this time last year, They bring in Shohei Ohtani for the $700 million. I get it, $680 million deferred. And they also bring in Yoshi Yamamoto, the top pitcher that they signed from Japan, 12 years, $325 million. So right away, people are thinking, oh, well, all the pressure is squarely on the Dodgers. As I said last year, World Series sweep or bust. And they actually came close to doing that, and they did win a World Series. So all was right in La La Land. They got their parade. Shohei wins your MVP. So everything is just glitter, glitz, and glam as typical Hollywood as the Dodgers go on and win their first 162-game regular season World Series since 1988, pandemic notwithstanding. And then now you would think, all right, maybe pedal off the metal, a little hangover. All right, we're fat cats now. We've read all the publications. All the pressure is off. They've come back even bigger and stronger and with even more additions to the team, whether your name is Blake Snell, whether your name is Roki Sasaki, whether your name is Tanner Scott, whether your name is the closer in a one, Tyler Yates. I mean, it's just on and on and on with their organization just stockpiling and not even retooling, but certainly reloading a team that has a payroll through the roof, that has an over-under win total of 104.5, and right now, 7 games into the season, they're on pace to be undefeated. Is it going to happen? Of course it's not. But we could argue, are they going to win 105? Are they going to win 110? Are they going to match the Seattle Mariners of 116 and 46 in 2001? Or could they even surpass that? Listen, the Chicago White Sox last year went 41 and 121. Could you almost see the flip side of the Dodgers being 121 and 41? Well, I will say this. If they do win 120 games, or let's just say they even eclipse the 116 and 46 of the 2001 Seattle Mariners, well, they better go, if not 11 and 2, 11 and 1, or maybe 11 and 0 in the postseason. Meaning a sweep in the wild card, a sweep in the division series, a sweep in the championship series, and a sweep in the World Series. Because it would be an absolute crime by the Dodgers, of course, without being decimated by injuries, if they even played in the wild card round, which means they would have to fall anywhere between 3 to 6 in the pecking order as far as the National League goes. So how I'm going to look at it is, they're going to have that bye. They're going to play that wild card round, the divisional series. Again, here I go with the wild card, which, as we all know, is a best of 5, championship series best of 7, and World Series best of 7. So let's see. And this Dodger team is obviously on a mission, to say the least. So thank you, Val. I appreciate your contribution. I truly am thankful and grateful for your comments and for you stopping by, just carving out precious time out of the day to listen to what it is I have to say. So now, as far as the Padres, just to go back there for a second, now the Padres, they didn't really do that much this offseason. And if you recall, this is a team that, I don't want to say they're going through transition, because remember, 2 years ago, they lost Blake Snell. He went to San Francisco before going back down the turnpike to L.A. Hae-Sung Kim, their former infielder, went to Tampa. And Tanner Scott, who is on the roster as far as being a guy out of the bullpen for San Diego, obviously he goes up the coast to L.A., and this is a team that didn't really do that much this offseason. Now, they did sign Jackson Merrill, their Rookie of the Year runner-up last year, to a 9-year, $135 million deal. So when you think about it, that is actually a very cost-friendly contract, considering he's coming 1 year removed out of being a rookie. So with Merrill, with Fernando Tatis Jr., with Manny Machado, with Jay Cronenworth, and the like, this is a team that is looking to get back to the same scenario that they were last year, because a lot of people don't think that they're going to compete for a division, obviously with all the bouquets that I threw at the Dodgers' feet. But the Padres say, well, wait a minute. They may be undefeated, but guess what? We're undefeated too. And they're 6-0. And in the process, they beat up the Braves too, as they swept them over the weekend. And I'm going to get to them next. And that may not be saying much considering the start that they've had. But the Padres, who have gone eyeball to eyeball, toe to toe with the Dodgers over the last couple of years. They beat them in the division series now 3 years ago. And then last year had a 2-1 series lead before spinning the bit and outscoring a run in Game 4 or Game 5 in LA. But we know that although they're the little brother there in Southern California to the big brother Dodgers, but I certainly don't look at this Padre team as one that's going to fear LA when the chips are on the table. Does that mean they're going to win? Does that mean that they're just automatically unafraid of playing the Dodgers? I'm not going to say that, but I will say this. The Padres will certainly throw everything in the kitchen sink at the Dodgers because by any means, they will certainly not cower away or certainly look to the side or take a back seat to them, considering the way they played against them here over the last couple of years. But to think, even with the Dodgers' fast start out of the gate, the Padres are right behind them. And the Padres, as good as they've gotten off to a start, you would think that this is going to diet down, this is going to slow down, and for all the teams, that's going to happen. But with the Dodgers, who knows? Again, they're probably looking at this as, now we're going to come back bigger and better as the roster shows and what the front office has done. But now we're going to even add that more of a bigger layer to their franchise, to their resume to say, all right, this is what we built last year, but this year is going to be bigger and better. And right now, you can't even argue with what they've done here over the course of the first 7 games. And then you have the Braves, who are 0-6. The Atlanta Braves, who have been in the postseason several times here over the last 5-6 years. A team that went into October last year ailing, hurting. They got swept by the Padres in the wild card round, those 2 games. And I don't know if they stood out there, and I'm kidding, of course, because obviously their spring training site is in Florida, but they go to San Diego, and not only do they get swept out of San Diego, but then they got broomed out and up north to the Dodgers, and they lost the first 2 games of the series here on Monday and Tuesday and could get swept out and back to Atlanta, where they'll open their home schedule against the Miami Marlins. But you have to be really concerned. And I understand it's way too early. And we could look at even a team like the Mets last year who started off 0-5 and were on the verge of being 0-6. And how did the rest of their season go? Now, they didn't get started until June 2nd, I understand. But it is way too early. But I would think that they would want to get this game this afternoon. I believe it's an afternoon game. Let me pull that up. It actually may not. Where's my baseball schedule here? It actually may not, because if they do play on Friday, I would think that the game tonight or the game today would be a night game as I pull up the schedule here. So Dodgers, it's an 8:38 game, MLB Network. All right, so it's a 5:30 game where Atlanta, obviously that will be a situation where they'll open their season on Friday against the Marlins. And that is a night game, which is weird. How are you going to open up your regular season, home schedule, opening day at night? That's an afternoon tilt. That's what's wrong about baseball in that regard. Opening day is meant for afternoon baseball. Even if the game is being played in Toronto, which I understand we have a roof, but it doesn't matter. Play in the afternoon, but I digress. So in order for Atlanta, let's see who the pitching matchup is tonight for them. They have Bryce Elder going up against Blake Snell. All right, Elder, good young pitcher, but Snell, who I would think, now I don't know how he did in his first start. Snell is a guy that, as we all know, is a pitcher that, as I called him once upon a time, and maybe it's unfair to say so now because he's had a much better career than the aforementioned, or about to be aforementioned. But if you recall, a former Met farmhand who got traded to Tampa and actually had a good career, but not the ballyhoo career when he was first drafted in a one Scott Kazmir. To me, that's Blake Snell, but he's more of a rich man's Scott Kazmir than a poor man's Scott Kazmir. But he's a guy that is a high-volume pitcher. Yes, could strike out the ballpark, but he could also walk the ballpark, but he could also be unhittable too. And that is Blake Snell in a nutshell. So he's going to pitch tonight against Bryce Elder. And does Atlanta win this game? I don't know. I could see them coming back to Atlanta 0-6. and the sky will start to fall in the ATL, and you're going to have a situation where they're going to have to dig themselves out of a decent hole there in the National League East. But that's what you have there with the baseball there. I could get into some other things, but with the Braves being the last team that is winless in the sport, yes, even Detroit and Milwaukee both got wins after just brutal weekends in LA and New York, especially for the Brewers with the whole torpedo bat thing. And I'm not going to get into that because to me, torpedo bats were around even as early as last year. Cody Bellinger actually used a torpedo bat. And I just found out yesterday that Giancarlo Stanton on the Yankees had used a torpedo bat. So just because they had 9 home runs in the game on Saturday against the Brewers and 4 more in the game on Sunday, now all of a sudden it's the big thing. It's all the rage about these torpedo bats where now the Braves are going to, I believe they've also placed an order for them. Whether they come or not is another story because based on their offensive performance here so far this year, I'm sure if they happen to hit Dodger Stadium today and maybe they'll give them a whirl or a quick test, we'll see. But chances are they'll probably have to wait until they get home, until they get the bats, a day off tomorrow, and maybe a few swings in the cage to get a better feel for these bats as opposed to doing it on the fly. Who knows? But I digress. I'm not going to unpack that whole thing. I talked about it on Monday's podcast, in fact. And right. I mean, you can bat with a toothpick. If you're able to hit with it and it goes a long way, then who knows? I'm sure players are going to start using toothpicks as bats. So that's just another thing to throw at you just for grins and giggles. But that's what you have with the baseball. Let me touch on a few other things here. I got the NBA with the final week and a half here, and there really isn't much to discuss. I hate to say it because you already know who the 1 seeds are in each conference. East, Cleveland, Oklahoma City. Out West, the Celtics will be the 2 seed. The Knicks are already entrenched in the 3. 4, 5, and 6. Right now, the Bucks look like they could be 6 to play the Knicks. 4, 5, Detroit, Indiana. They're going to fight out for home court there. And the 7 through 10 in the East is a complete waste of time because whomever comes out of that as the 7th or 8th seeds, sacrificial lambs to both the Cavaliers and Celtics along the way. So that's why I'm not even going to go there as far as the East is concerned. Out West, interesting with Houston, Denver, Lakers, and even Warriors for that matter. And then after that, you have Memphis. And here's one thing I'm going to say about that 4-5 seed. If the season ended today, it'd be Lakers, Warriors. Everybody would be going crazy. Oh, wow, great, so on and so forth. But guess what? That is the last thing Adam Silver wants to see, another Lakers-Warriors matchup. Because remember last year, Lakers-Warriors was the, I want to say, was that the play-in last year? And the Warriors were out in that first game because the Lakers, were they an 8 seed? Oklahoma was the 1. So, no, they ended up being a 7. So I may have that mixed up as far as my Laker-Warrior postseason matchups. Something told me that they played, maybe I'm thinking about a few years ago. But the last thing the NBA wants is a situation where LeBron is going up against Steph Curry in a first-round matchup because one of those two are going to be gone. Now, they would prefer a Western Conference final, but that's not going to happen, as you know, or even maybe a second round for that matter. So let's just say if the Warriors stay at 6, now they can meet up in an Eastern Conference final, although it's unlikely because if the Warriors are a 6 seed, let's just say for argument's sake, they will play the 3 seed to start, and then the winner will play the 2-7 winner in that bracket, whereas the 4-5, they win that series, and they're going to play the 1-8. So they would want them as far separate as possible just to possibly get length in the postseason, but even better yet, if the stars are aligned and the planets are in order to where you get upsets in the second round. So if the Warriors win the 3-6 matchup and the Lakers win the 4-5, and then the Warriors win the 2-7 matchup, and if we would think that Oklahoma City is the 1 and the Lakers beat them, and then you have a clash of the Titans with LeBron against Curry in a Western Conference final, you know Adam Silver will be drunk on the Dom Perignon with the chocolate-covered strawberries, and he would only just he would do cartwheels and handstands if that's the case. But that is a long way off, and there's a long shot. Unfortunately, they have a better shot of meeting in the first round than in a conference final. And if they do meet up in the first round, 4-5 matchup, he'll be spitting out that Dom Perignon and will just be sick to his stomach if that's the case. But in the Western Conference, a lot more intrigue than the East. But you have a situation where will Houston hold on to that 2 seed, or will Denver overtake the Rockets and get the 2 seed, which I think may not bode well, only because remember last year they were 2 seed and they lost to the T-Wolves in that round. So, yes, although it would be a boon to have 2 of the first series, whether it be the first round or the conference semifinals, in your building, but it's no guarantee that you win it. But between Houston, Denver, LA, Golden State, Memphis now is falling on hard times. And I picked Memphis as an over at 45.5. But they have been in a free fall and have 7 games left. They just have to go 2-5 to go 46, and at least they'll be a winner in that regard. So who knows? Watch them continue this just collapse. And with the coach being fired last week, if you recall, and I talked about that on Monday's podcast as well. Again, if you haven't listened to it, please go back on the YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts to check it out. But the West is intriguing in that regard as to where those teams will end up as far as seedings go. And then 7 through 10 is also interesting because you have Minnesota, and they are that close to being in that 6 range where they're certainly within striking distance. The Clippers are 8 right now, again within a game or so of the Warriors, or now Memphis, because they're the 6th seed as of right this very moment, as far as them getting an opportunity to be a part of the first 6 where they don't have to worry about the playing scenario. And then you have Dallas, who's played well here, give it up as they're the 9th seed. But then you have Sacramento and then Phoenix, who are without Kevin Durant, whereas he has that ankle injury that he turned there on, Sunday night. And Phoenix doesn't deserve it. They've just been so underachieving that even if they do happen to sneak in through the back door, whether that means Sacramento continues to not play well, or Dallas now all of a sudden starts to play the way they have in the early part of March. But that's all you have in the NBA. There really isn't much to sink your teeth into. Yeah, you want to talk about the seedings or who's going to avoid the playing scenario. Will the T-Wolves get into the big body of the Western Conference? Will Golden State come back to the pack? Will the Clippers maybe even get the 7th seed so where they be able to host not 1, but maybe 2 games if they don't win that opening 7-8 matchup? I mean, there's just so much to unpack more in the Western Conference than it is in the East. But where that's going to lie as we get toward this final week and a half, I'll be on top of it, as you know. I'll talk more about that on tomorrow's podcast. And, of course, the following podcast, whether it be Monday, and then obviously we'll be back next Wednesday, so we can talk about it more so then, as we'll literally be days away from the conclusion of the regular season. But the NBA, I'm sure right now, they just want to get to next Sunday, see where they're at with these seedings, who's going to qualify, who's not, and then you'll have your playing tournament followed by the playoffs, which, again, will be a week from this coming Saturday. Excuse me. So I'll drink to that real quick. And no, it's just filtered water. So if you have any ideas, it's not vodka or rum or tequila. So just thought to put that out there. All right, now let me turn my attention here. I want to talk a little NHL. And for this right here graphic, now I talked about the Capitals in the year they've had. And me, who follow the sport, but even if you had the hockey purist, you had the hockey aficionado, if you would have picked that person's brain back in early October, and if you would have asked them, who has a better chance? Alex Ovechkin eclipsing Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record of 894 goals, which now Ovechkin is 4, and I got to take that back. He's 4 from breaking it. He's 3 from tying, 4 from breaking it. Or the Capitals are going to be the best team in the East in the regular season and will have the 1 seed and home ice throughout the Eastern Conference. I'm sure, quick of a snap, you would have said, oh, Ovechkin's going to break Gretzky's record. There's no way that the Capitals are going to be the best record or have the best team in the East. Well, here they are. And by a huge margin. They have 105 points. I believe they're 11 points ahead of Toronto in the Atlantic Division. And right now, with the way they've played, they, in my eyes, similar to what we've seen in the NBA, and I talked about this weeks ago, you had this scenario where Washington and Winnipeg, two teams that I'm sure a lot of people didn't think would be at the top of their respective conferences, similar to Oklahoma City, Cleveland, maybe not so much OKC, because last year, remember, they were a 1 seed also, but with the Celtics defending their championship and with Cleveland, who were a middle-of-the-pack team last year, and yes, they may have fortified their bench a little bit, but we know who the starters are, same cast of characters of last year, but nobody thought in their right frame of mind that the Cavaliers were just going to have a monster year, one of the biggest seasons in franchise history, minus LeBron James. And you had the same scenario in the NHL with the Winnipeg Jets and the Washington Capitals, that to me, you'd have to really think that they would have to be the favorites to come out of their conferences and meet in a Stanley Cup final. But as of right this very moment, I'm sure a lot of people would say, oh, I like Vegas better in the West. Oh, I like Dallas better in the West or in the East. How could you not bet against the Florida Panthers, who are the reigning Stanley Cup champions, or even the Toronto Maple Leafs, who, as we understand, they have a very checkered playoff past. But who knows? Maybe this is the year that they get to a conference final, maybe play against the Capitals and go to a final. Lord knows they're overdue. They haven't been to a final in now 32 years, and they haven't won a Stanley Cup in 57 years, going on 58. So back to the Capitals. Sorry, I just wiped myself out there. My apologies for those who thought I just prematurely disconnected this live stream. I did not. So that was weird. All I want to do is just swipe the trackpad on my laptop, and next thing you know, it just completely kicked me out. So my apologies there for just canceling I thought I canceled. I didn't end the live stream. But anyway, back to the Capitals. It is one of those things where it's mind-boggling to think they've gotten to this point, and they can certainly have a big year. But here is going to be my observation that I talked about earlier. And I think it's a valid one. And I don't know how many other people out there have talked about it, because you still have 2 weeks left in the regular season. In fact, the NHL regular season ends 2 weeks from tomorrow. And I'm sure people are not thinking about the Capitals going on a long playoff run, or if Alexander Ovechkin does, and that's a huge if, although I think he's going to break Wayne Gretzky's record before the end of the regular season, or maybe he does it on the final day of the regular season. But let's just say he gets to 895. If the Capitals go to a Stanley Cup and win the Stanley Cup, does Alex Ovechkin retire? Does he hang up his skates? Does he say, you know what? I cannot go out on a bigger high than this. If I was him, 39 years of age, he has the record all to himself. Maybe he wants to get to 900, and I believe he still has one more year left on his contract, but maybe he wants to get to 900 goals. But I will say this, if it was me, knowing that this team had zero expectations of getting to a Stanley Cup at the beginning of the year, based on the media, the prognosticators, etc., and now that you've had this big regular season, and the cherry on top is, or I should take that back, the whipped cream is the 1 seed in the conference, as well as breaking a record that seemed to be unthinkable. Wayne Gretzky's 894. And then you go ahead, get to a cup final and win it. There isn't any better way to lead the sport than that. I mean, John Elway did it with the back-to-back, and even Jordan with the bucket over Brian Russell, although he came back after 2 years and played with the Wizards. But for Ovechkin to go off on a high note, there isn't any bigger of a high note than that. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to do so. But we have to get to a cup final first before we can even entertain the thought. The only reason why I bring it up now, one word, receipts. And yes, it could just wither away. The receipt could certainly shrivel up if the Capitals get bounced in the first round. Understood. But if they do get to a cup final and Ovechkin does get Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record, and let's say they win the whole thing, I can certainly see him going off into the sunset, retiring, and calling it a career. Simply put. So that's what you have there with Ovechkin and the NHL. And they have some interesting races there. I know my Islanders are flailing right now. The Islanders have just been brutal. And they have a tough schedule. They just finished playing the Panthers here over the weekend on a home-and-home where they lost to them in both games, and then they lost to Carolina along the way. So they are certainly going to be in for it here. If they're going to make it to the postseason, they're going to have to start now, but I don't think they're going to do so. But you have the interesting races for the wild card in the East and the West as well. And the St. Louis Blues have been unconscious here. They've won 10 in a row. And right now, looking to threaten the Minnesota Wild, as the 1 seed in the wild card, which you would avoid the 8th seed and the top seeded Winnipeg Jets in the opening round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So the Blues clicking on all cylinders, and who knows how high they could go as far as 7 seed. Yes, I don't know if they could get any higher than that, but kudos to the Blues for what they've done here, as they have put themselves in a very good position. And even though out west you have a handful of teams, Calgary's trying to make it as far as seeing if they can sneak in as a 7th or 8th seed. More so 8th seed, because there is some separation there from the 1 seed and the 2. Not so much. So I take that back. It's Minnesota and St. Louis. They are neck and neck. But the other teams, Calgary, Utah, as they're trying to make a move, Vancouver. So we'll see whether or not that's going to happen. There was a lot of separation between the 1 and 2, but because of that Blues winning streak, of course, they've narrowed the gap with them and the Minnesota Wild. So we'll certainly see how that's going to shape down. And in the East, you have a ton of teams there. I know Ottawa, the Rangers, Montreal, who has the slimmest of margins right now, but you have the Rangers, Columbus, the Islanders, if you want to throw them in the mix, as far as those teams threatening for the wild card. And then you do have the East with Toronto, Tampa, and the Florida Panthers. But other than that, you don't really have much there, as both NBA and NHL just want to get to the finish line, start their postseasons, and away they go. So that's what I got there with Ovechkin and that scenario. As I move it along here, your Final Four on Saturday night, I'm going to touch a lot about that on tomorrow's podcast. We know the cast of characters are Auburn in Florida is game 1, 6:09 in San Antonio, followed by Duke and Houston. That is scheduled for 8:49, which probably won't be until after 9 p.m. But you have the 4-1 seeds, as I mentioned earlier, hasn't happened since 2008, and which has not been a very interesting, intriguing, compelling, riveting March Madness. It's been anything but. Well, let's hope that these final 3 games will at least ratchet up intensity, drama, intrigue, suspense, to have some classic games to at least put a lid on this March Madness 2025 as one that, yes, it was a slog to get to, but once you got to the semifinals and the final, it was certainly one to remember. So that's what I have there, and I'll talk more about that tomorrow, so you have to tune in. Again, Apple, Spotify, or the YouTube channels you see scrolling at the bottom of the ticker, or on the ticker, I should say. Now, the new NFL rules, in particular with the OT, overtime and the kickoff. The overtime now, moving forward, it's still going to be 10 minutes, as it was revised about, 5 years ago or so. But now you're going to have both teams possess the ball in overtime. So it's not a situation where if the team that gets the ball wins the coin toss, and let's say they march down the length of the field and punch it in the end zone, the game is over. Whereas if they get to field goal range, they kick a field goal, then the other team will possess the ball. Well, guess what? Even if that team in overtime who has the ball first gets in the end zone and scores, the other team will get a shot and a crack to tie the game. But there's one big caveat to that. What if you get the ball and you take 9 minutes and 13 seconds off the clock? So now the team that's going to possess the ball second has 47 seconds to go the length of the field to tie the game? What? They have to change that back to 15 minutes. That's the only way this is going to work, because there's going to be a situation where a team may bleed the clock. And I understand that the team that's going to defend, they'll have 2 timeouts where they'll try to stop the clock. But let's just say you have that team that 6 minutes in, now 8 minutes in, and they're in the red zone, but they're 1st and 10 at the 16-yard line. They may want to try to milk the clock. They may want to try to take time off and not just punch it into the end zone if they've already had 8 minutes elapsed in the overtime. So they're going to have to change that at some point, because watch there be an instance next year where, and hopefully not late in the season, where the team's going to need the game as far as them qualifying or making it into the playoffs. But watch there be a scenario where teams are going to purposely bleed the clock, knowing that, all right, well, now it's 1st and goal. We're at the, I won't say 1, at the 4-yard line. We're just going to run 3 straight handoffs, or at least 2 handoffs, and then let's see what's going to happen on a pass play to try to get in the end zone. Could you see that happening? I certainly can. So I'm not in love. I'm in love with the change as far as them, both teams possessing the ball, but 10-minute overtimes, they should have corrected that. And yes, we can talk about player safety, and yes, we can talk about, still, which leads to the next thing with the kickoff. Now it's a situation where if you kick the ball in the end zone, the ball is going to be spotted at the 35-yard line, which means they're going to try to enhance the kickoff even more to get it brought out of the end zone. And just a couple of years ago, I believe they brought the kickoff to the 30 if you're going to take a knee or it gets kicked through the back of the end zone. Well, now it's going to be 35-yard line. So teams are going to have to purposely kick it to at least the goal line to have players return it, because you're giving these teams a gift by spotting them the ball at the 35-yard line. Because all it takes is 2 plays, and with the way these kickers are in 2025, they're already going to be in field goal range. But you want to talk about player safety? I don't want to say it's hypocritical or that the NFL's contradicting themselves. And obviously they've thought out these rules a lot better than I can. But from afar, when you observe this, it makes you think, wait, 10-minute quarter or 10-minute overtime where a team could actually take a 7, 8, 9-minute scoring drive. And then what does that leave for the team that's going to possess the ball for the first time in overtime? Not much. And then for player safety, let's kick the ball off and we'll spot the ball at the 35. I mean, you're literally giving them the ball on a silver platter. 5 more yards if you kick the ball out of bounds, you start them at the 40. So I get it that they want to encourage more returns, but let's hope that the kickers don't try to kick it through the uprights to where the ball's going to be spotted at the 35 each and every time. And while they're at it, they need to revise the onside kick rule, because it's a very low percentage play to begin with, but just to know that you have to announce it so you can have your hands team set up properly and make sure that the onside kick does not go in the favor of the team that's kicking. And I heard the stat the other day. I think that sounds too many. But based on what I saw, what I heard, I believe there were 84 onside kicks. To me, that sounds like a lot, but only 5 recoveries, which is, I think, 4%. You got to up that a little bit more. And keep the rule as it is. It has to go 10 yards before the team that's kicking off can actually touch the ball. Anything less than that, they can't. But we all know it is a very slim and none chance that these onside kicks will recover. So with that being said, they should also look at that again, and no warning either, which is nonsense, because that's like a pitcher telling a hitter, I'm going to throw a fastball right down the middle. No matter how many pitches you're going to take, I'm throwing it straight down the middle. Of course, if the hitter's going to look for that, guess what? They have a better shot of getting on base or getting some good wood on it where it's going to probably be launched over the fence. So now we have to tell the opposing team, oh, we want an onside kick. No, there should be a surprise element of that. And again, part of it, again, goes back to the whole player safety deal. But scrums and things of that nature are going to happen. Even if a ball gets stripped or knocked loose, what do you think? People are running to the huddle like this, tiptoeing? No, they're diving for that loose ball. They're going head first. So you're going to have heads, shoulders, arms exposed. So what difference does that make a team trying to recover a fumble than it would be if you telegraph a surprise onside kick? Well, we want to limit whatever damage when it comes to onside kicks. Nonsense. That's a play that should be a part, and it is a part of the game, but should be a part where there is no warning or there has been no announcement of a team telling the other team, hey, we're down by 2 scores. It's midway through the fourth quarter. Guess what? We're going to have to tell you that we're going to kick an onside kick. To me, that is the most silliest thing. What I feel like there's – I thought there was a phone ringing. I know you may hear construction in the background, so my apologies for that if you've listened to that throughout the course of this live stream. But how I look at it is that the NFL, as we all know, everybody eyeballs to the sets. They're impenetrable, they're impregnable, etc. But I wish that they would have taken the overtime rule and extend that to 15 minutes, taken the kickoff. All right, you want to keep it at the 35, that's fine. But then maybe even push the kickback. I believe kickers are kicking it from the 30. Let them kick it from the 25. Oh, but yeah, let them kick it from the 20. How about that? You'll be sure to get returns from there. But again, player safety. I mean, which one is it? Roger Goodell and the competition committee and the rules committee, which one is it? So obviously they're trying to figure that out. And to me, those changes, I feel, are best that need to be made. Obviously, I'm not part of those committees or a part of those committees, etc. But this is what happens when they try to tweak the rules and doesn't really look like it's going to be popular amongst the people who watch the sport on a week in, week out basis. All right, now I got a couple of quickies before I bid adieu. Here is the first one. Reels Rants, critique videos. And there are 3 I see in the room, so please do not be shy. Leave a comment. Let's go back and forth and talk about this because this is where your contribution is important to the live streams. Now, my Reels Rants, if you watch me on YouTube, I do my 1-minute videos. There are critiques at times, or there are jabs or digs at times within the video. But I'm actually thinking about putting forth a handful of critique videos. And what I mean by that is this. I'll use the Pat McAfee show, for example. So if you didn't watch last week the LeBron discussion where LeBron James was live in studio, well, he wasn't live, but it was recorded the day before. But you had LeBron in studio with Pat McAfee, 1 hour and 12 minutes, and LeBron was fair game. And I actually had some issues, not necessarily with the interview itself, but there were certain things that were not targeted that LeBron actually left out for McAfee to just, that's it. He set him up, knock him down. So, and it's not necessarily critiquing Pat McAfee or his staff, the show, etc. But it's critiquing how there should have been follow-ups to things that LeBron had set him up. And on top of that, whether or not you feel like, yeah, that question should have been asked, or yes, that should have been brought up. That's how I'm going to look at it as far as a critique video. And that doesn't mean it's just all Pat McAfee. I'm going to go after Stephen A. or anybody else that has a platform. And by all means, this is just for my opinion and for entertainment purposes only. This isn't a thing where I have vendettas. This isn't a situation where I have gripes or whatever. And there may be videos that I'll critique quite perfectly. So everybody's fair game here. Just like people will be fair game to me. Oh, Jay Reels, you know what you're talking about. Or, oh, Jay, that's a stupid thing. Or I had people getting at me over the weekend with the whole torpedo bat situation. So my thing is that in the process of critiquing, and it's fair criticism. So I'll give you a brief example. How about that? Just so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. So there was a point in this video, the Pat McAfee LeBron, where LeBron admitted the 2011 NBA Finals, how he had a rough go at it, how the media was on his case, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he did acknowledge that. And Pat McAfee didn't follow up with that. And this would have been the best question or the best angle. Since LeBron mentioned, yeah, it's my series against the Mavericks obviously wasn't up to par. I certainly fell short of my abilities, of my reputation, whatever it may be that LeBron had said. And that's where McAfee could have came out and said, yes, can we go back and talk about that? What happened there? And I believe in game 4 of that series, it may have been game 5 from what I recall, where Dwayne Wade was actually on the court talking to LeBron like, hey, you can go ahead and take over this game. Even though it's Dwayne Wade's team, obviously drafted by the team, won a championship without him in 06, etc. But there was some, not heated, but some animated discussions between Dwayne Wade and LeBron. And as we all know, LeBron was very, very reserved in that series as far as offensively is concerned. So that would have been prime, just easy layups for McAfee to follow up and say, yeah, what happened in that series? And oh, by the way, I remember you and D Wade, maybe not going at it, but D Wade, getting into your mug saying, yo, take over this game, or yo, what's going on, or whatever. Any mention of that was brought up? Not at all. And that's what I'm referring to. Because I know that if the people that I've interviewed in the past, if they're going to come out and say something that right away it's 3-alarm fire, I'm going to pounce on it. I'm going to jump all over it. So that's going to be part of the critique video, is me just doing an analytical throughout the course of the conversation, podcast, etc. And I'm going to do that with many others. So I have a lot of homework. I just used Pat McAfee as an example because that was just the most recent interview or recent piece of content that I could critique and really go in on. So one more time, everybody's fair game, everybody's open, and no vendettas. This is coming at it just from an opinion and entertainment perspective, but there's going to be a lot of truth in it. I'm not going to fabricate. I will give props to whomever it is, whatever show, whatever host, if they do a remarkable job, or even if they're doing a not so good job in my eyes, but if they highlight something or a couple of things, I will point it out. I'll be like, wow, that was good for him to ask that, or wow, great mention on this. I'm going to do that. So for those who are going to think that, oh, I got to have it out for Stephen A. or Pat McAfee or Gilbert Arenas or you name it, whomever it is, all the smoke, Paul George, I'm just throwing names out. Yes, I will watch, critique, and I'm not going to watch every single one, but if I feel like there's an interesting guest or they're going to have a particular topic, it could be a 10-minute video that they're talking about, let's say, the state of the NBA, and if I'm going to listen to it, and granted, if they're going to be current players or former players, of course, they're going to have a much better feel than I will. But at the same time, if there's something in that video that, wait a minute, a little off kilter or out of whack or out of left field, this is where the critique video is going to come in, and that's where I'm going to, of course, handicap my thoughts and your thoughts. Please, I don't see any comments. If anybody thinks that Jay Reels, that's an excellent idea, I would certainly watch that. Or Jay Reels, I think you're off your rocker. You're certainly playing with fire there. Please, I'm open to the constructive criticism. And this is something that I've been thinking about for quite some time. And it was actually reinforced over the weekend with me. So that's where I thought, I said, you know what? I'm going to have to start doing this. Now, I'm going to actually record quite a few of them. So what I'll do is put them out weekly. So just like I'm doing the weekly live stream, maybe every Friday I'll put out a critique video. And then who knows? Let's see how that builds. We'll do almost like a season series. You know, if I release like 5 episodes, I'll see how it responds. And even if it doesn't respond well, I'll put out another 5. And if for whatever reason it doesn't gain any traction, they'll say, all right, I gave it a shot, and that's that. So your thoughts, I'd love to hear it. And, of course, if you're watching this on the replay, please leave a comment. I would be more than ecstatic to follow up and digest what it is you have to say about that. And then the last thing is, before I bid adieu, the last thing is Friday. And I should have typed this in. Do I have this on my banner? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to do this on the fly. All right, so people, get ready, because this is your chance to meet me. Not that I'm a big deal by any stretch. And, of course, you have to live in a tri-state area. I don't expect, if you're watching this from Spokane, Washington, or Tempe, Arizona, or Beaumont, Texas, or even, hey, if you happen to be on the other side of the bridge in Hackensack, New Jersey, if you want to come on down, please feel free. I'd be more than happy to do so. But as I type this in, doing this on the fly on a live feed, the Mets have their home opener against the Toronto Blue Jays. And for those who are going to the game, or maybe tailgating, I'm sure there'll be a few that will just tailgate with, whether it be the Seven Line Army. I'll give them a shout, not that I've been a part of them, but I'm going to look out for them come Friday morning. But Citi Field, home opener, I'll be there. Now, I'm not going to the game, but I will be in the parking lots. You're going to have to look for yours truly, and maybe on I'll go Instagram, maybe even YouTube too, or TikTok for that matter. Maybe I'll even do a live on TikTok while I film that. Who knows? But either one of those three platforms. So whether it be Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, and maybe live on Instagram or TikTok, I'm going to take the temperature of the Met fan. And considering right now they're under 500 on this current road trip, where they lost 2 out of 3 in Houston and have split the first 2 games in Miami, where they'll play the rubber match later this afternoon. I believe it's 4:40 is their start time. And with the day off tomorrow and an opening day on Friday, I will be out in the parking lot, Citi Field, taking the temperature of the Met fan for a future vlog. So if you want to be a part of the vlog, come on out. Look for me. You'll see me with my tripod and camera, as I will interview as many people as I can for a vlog that I'll probably release sometime the early part of next week. Depends how much footage I get. If I get 100 Met fans, remember, I got to sift through all that and make sure I get the proper ones. But this is one thing that I'm going to also embark on as far as being a content creator, to go along with the critique videos, but to do on-location interviewing. And I'm also thinking about doing this for the Knicks as well when the playoffs begin, as I'll go down to the Garden. I'll stand outside the Garden, take a temperature of the Knicks fan. Hey, do you see you guys going far this year? So keep that in mind. And I'm saying I live in a New York area, but starting this Friday, and I'm going to say around 10 a.m., I'll be out there. I'll even post where I'll be at. Maybe I'll be by the Big Apple, Citi Field, where everybody's coming off the subway, or even the Tom Seaver statue. I may be there too. But you'll see me. And if you want to be a part of the vlog, you want to be on camera, to be a part of my YouTube channel, come on down. This is your open invite. So please feel free. If you're going to the game, if you're not, I understand. Or maybe if you are tailgating with the Seven Line Army, etc. And I'm going to make my way over to the Seven Line Army because I want to meet Darren. Meaning, if you don't know who the Seven Line Army is, Google it. You'll see for yourself. But I'm going to make an appearance out there Friday, I'd say 10 a.m. prior to the first pitch there on Friday afternoon, as the Mets will raise the curtain to their home schedule against the Blue Jays out at Citi Field. So that's what you have there, people. And what else can I discuss? I think that's pretty much it. Any last thoughts? I know I haven't got any comments here. There's a couple of people as I see, that are on live, and I appreciate you, whomever you may be, for taking time out of your day to watch me and listen to what it is I have to say about what's happening in the world of sports. But if that's the case, that is it, people. Please subscribe, like, leave a comment. Again, your contribution is vital to this endeavor that I've been doing now full-time for over a year and not getting paid. I'm trying to get the passive income from various sources. And here on YouTube, I am 6 subscribers, as I checked from this morning, of 600. I want to get to 1,000 to get to the 4,000 watch hours because I want to start monetizing. So you know how important it is for me to continue to pump out content, to continue to put forth a not only informative, entertaining, but more importantly, a credible platform for sports fans like yourselves to come to me to, one more time, listen to what it is I have to say about what's happening in what I call the toy department of Life Coach Sports. So, and as you all know on the ticker on the bottom, every Wednesday, 12 noon. So tell a friend to tell a friend, come one, come all, open invites, everybody. If you could do that, I would sincerely appreciate that. And I guess that will conclude it. Another live stream in the books. Thank you so much once again for those who stopped by, left comments, to my guy Val B, and anybody else who was in the room. Again, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I know I'm trying to gain more traction with these live streams, and I'm going to continue to do so until I am no longer a part of God's green earth. And considering I just turned 56 2 days ago, I hope to be here for another 56 more. But with that being said, please subscribe, rate, review, like I mentioned here, as you see there on the graphic, just to increase the visibility of this live stream, of the podcast, of the channel, to all those who are either good sports fans, great sports fans, the kook like yours truly, the diehard, the casual, doesn't matter. And not only that, but for those who do like content, even on a more personal level, there's going to be a lot of that coming down the pike. I promise you that, especially with the warmer days coming. I can film outside a little bit more. I understand, no excuses. I get it. But still, it's a huge part of the channel as well, not only just sports, but just my journey in having this dream that I'm fulfilling, of being an independent podcast content creator and doing this really with just whatever resources I have and the supporters and followers like yourself who have been on board, and I hope you continue to stay on board. So one more time, I thank you. If you want to hit me up with a question, comment, or suggestion, you can do so at the following: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the J Reels Podcast, and of course, those aforementioned Instagram and even TikTok, the J Reels Podcast, if I do a live on Friday, so keep that in mind as well. And then Twitter, JReels1, just the number, and the old-fashioned way, the JReelsPodcast at gmail.com. Hit me up. I'll be more than happy to follow up with you guys and gals, because whether you do or do not know, this is what I love to do, people. This is why I quit my job, to do this full time and to earn a living, carving out a path and a trail in this podcast universe with all the others that are out there. And I've put forth 555 episodes in the bank, and I don't know how many live streams to date, but I'm going to continue to do so, because as long as I'm sitting in front of this camera and this microphone, I will give my all with nothing but passion, fire, energy, fury, with my thoughts, opinions, critiques, praise, analysis, feelings on anything and everything that happens on the world of the diamond, ice, gridiron, hardwood, golf course, racetrack, tennis court, boxing ring, octagon, you name it. My love to your ears, from my heart to your soul, from where I am to wherever you are. The J Reels Podcast and this live stream always comes live, direct, correct, and in full effect. From the South Bronx, the South Beach, the South Central, the South Pacific, and all points beyond. Peace, love, and God bless everybody. Until tomorrow's podcast, Apple, Spotify, of course, here on YouTube at J Reels. Until next time, on the foot, baby.